Would you agree those are the top three causes of inflation? Deficit spending, high energy costs, and supply dislocations?
I don't believe that deficit spending is one of the main causes of inflation.
Do you know how much a dollar that you held at the start of the Biden administration in January 2021 is worth today?
Well, we've had inflation and it's declined in its purchasing power.
It's worth 87 cents. In your testimony, you said that inflation is the #1 economic problem. Do you know what the inflation rate was at the start of the Biden administration in January 2021?
It was substantially lower.
It was 1.4%. You said that inflation has many causes. I agree with that. By the way, I would say that the #1 economic problem is our debt and deficit. And I would say that the top three causes of inflation are massive deficit spending, the war on fossil fuels, which have driven gasoline prices to record levels, obviously supply chain dislocation. That was caused by our miserably failed and incredibly stupid response to COVID, the pandemic. But would you agree those are the top three causes of inflation? Deficit spending, high energy costs, and supply dislocations?
I don't believe that deficit spending is one of the main causes of inflation.
I mean, inflation is too many dollars chasing too few goods. Well, so when you're printing all this stuff, so do you know in the first 3 fiscal years of the Biden administration, you know how much the total deficit spending is going to be?
We had an economic collapse that was caused by the pandemic.
Right, and we were certainly coming out of that because there's all this pent-up demand and a sloshing around of trillions of dollars. So I'll answer that question for you, too. The first 3 fiscal years of this administration, the total deficits would be about $5.7 trillion. So now you're here testifying about the president's budget. How much are the total deficits over that 10-year period according to the president's budget? You don't know that off the top of your head? Here, listen, I'm running out. It's $17 trillion, okay?
Yeah, that's
you're going to drive the debt from somewhere around $32 trillion up to about $50 trillion, correct?
Yes, but what I believe is the single most important metric for judging the fiscal stance of the country is real net interest as a share of GDP.
Okay.
We have
so are you concerned when you're taking the debt from $32 to $50 trillion? Are you concerned who's going to buy that debt, and also at what rate they'll expect to be compensated for buying riskier and riskier debt? Are you concerned about that?
Well, if the real net interest cost of the debt remains low relative to GDP, and we're on a sustaemagoguery fiscal.
Well, we're not on a sustainable path. Senator Cassidy was talking about the president's demagoguery on Social Security, unwillingness to try and save Social Security. If we do nothing, and the Social Security Trust Fund runs out 2023 to 2025, about the end of the budget period, are you concerned about, are we going to have the financial wherewithal to plus up benefits to honor those promises? I mean, you think we're going to, with $50 trillion in debt, a debt's exceeding our GDP, aren't you concerned about our inability to honor those promises?
The interest cost on the debt as a share of our economy remains quite low throughout the 10-year horizon of the president's budget. It remains around 1%.
Secretary, and you're also the one who said
very manageable.
You also said that inflation was transitory, and it certainly isn't. And I think Chairman Powell certainly now agrees the fact that, no, we've got something going on here that's going to take a very long while, unfortunately, to wring out of our system. Not only you, but OMB Director Young and members of the other side keep talking about that you're cutting deficits. The deficit in 2021 obviously was high because of the pandemic. But in 2022 is about $1.4 trillion. 2023 we think it's going to be about $1.6 trillion. 2024 you're projecting $1.85 trillion. And again, growing debt by another 7%. It never drops below $1.5 trillion. How can you claim that you're cutting deficits?
Well, it always is a comparison with the baseline of what would happen if our policies were not enacted, and the increase in deficits would be larger. There's net deficit reduction over 10 years.
Saying you're cutting the deficit is just misleading the American public. Let me ask you one final question. Because we always hear on the other side, same thing from OMB Director Young yesterday, that we want to make the rich pay their fair share. So, I mean, the fact is, and this is the latest figures we have from the Treasury, 2020, the top 1% made about 22% of income, but they paid 42.3% of the income tax. Now, I'm not going to ask you the metric. At what point, I mean, how much of the total income tax should the top 1% pay before you'll consider and before President Biden will consider they're finally paying their fair share? I mean, they're paying double the income tax that they're getting in income. It's obviously a highly progressive rate. By the way, the bottom, they're paying
my colleague's over his time, and I want the witness to answer his question.
Well, I believe that billionaires should pay rates that are not lower than what a teacher or firefighter pays.
Okay, the top 1% averages
the time of the gentleman's expired. Senator Tillis is
my
next.
colleague got 7 minutes. The top 1% pay in
the time of the gentleman's expired.
The bottom 50% pay 3.1. We have a highly progressive tax system.